The red appeared on Captain Thornton's back at exactly 1400 hours. Specialist Tamara O'Yelleran saw it from 40 meters away, a tiny crimson circle dancing between his shoulder blades as he walked toward the motor pool, completely unaware that he had 3 seconds to live. What happened next would be replayed in briefings across Iraq for months. But what those briefings would never capture, what no official report would ever contain, was the truth about who Tamara O'Yelleran really was and why she was the only person on that base who could have done what she did. 72 hours earlier, forward operating base hammer baked under the relentless Iraqi sun. Tamara wiped sweat from her forehead and continued counting crates in the supply warehouse, her clipboard filled with inventory marks that no one would ever thank her for. 6 years in the Army, 2 deployments, a spotless record, and still, she was invisible. Before we continue, drop a comment and let us know what state you're watching from. Maybe you know someone in the military who has been underestimated because of their role. The warehouse door banged open and Sergeant First Class Crenshaw walked in like he owned the place. He probably thought he did. O'Yelleran, he called out, dragging her name through his teeth like it tasted bad. Where are my vehicle parts? I put in that request 3 days ago. Tamara did not look up from her clipboard. She had learned that looking up only invited more conversation. Your request is being processed, Sergeant. Supply chain from Kuwait is backed up. Should have the parts by Thursday. Thursday? Crenshaw laughed, but there was no humor in it. I need them today. What exactly do you do back here all day? Count boxes and collect a paycheck. Several soldiers passing by the warehouse entrance slowed to watch. Tamara felt their eyes on her. She kept her voice level. I process over 200 requests per week, Sergeant. Your parts will arrive when the convoy arrives. That is how supply works. Crenshaw stepped closer, close enough that she could smell the cigarettes on his breath. Let me explain something to you, box girl. While real soldiers are out there risking their lives, you are back here playing warehouse. So when I need something, you find a way to make it happen. Are we clear? Crystal, Sergeant. He held her gaze for a long moment, waiting for her to flinch. She did not. Finally, he turned and walked out, muttering something to the watching soldiers that made them laugh. Private First Class Whitmore appeared from behind a stack of MRE cases where he had been hiding. That guy is unbelievable. How do you not lose it on him? Tamara finally looked up, because losing it does not get the job done, Darnell. And the job is what matters. Whitmore shook his head. You are better than me. I would have thrown a wrench at his head by now. That night, the FOB gathered for evening briefing. Tamara stood at the back, as always, half listening to the intelligence update while her mind organized tomorrow's shipment schedule. Then a phrase cut through her thoughts. The ghost of Mosul, the intelligence officer, was saying, "We have confirmed he is operating in our sector. 3 officer casualties in the past 2 weeks, all from extreme range. Battalion is implementing new movement protocols effective immediately." Tamara watched Captain Thornton nod from the front of the room. He was a good officer, fair and professional, but she had never spoken to him directly. Captains did not speak to supply specialists. That was simply how things worked. After the briefing, Whitmore found her outside the DFAC. You hear about that sniper. 3 kills already. Some of the guys are saying he is like a ghost for real. Never leaves a trace. Tamara stared out at the perimeter at the guard towers silhouetted against the darkening sky. Something her father used to say echoed in her mind. The most dangerous enemy is the one you do not see coming. What? Whitmore asked. Nothing. Just something my dad used to tell me. That night, alone in her quarters, Tamara cleaned her personal sidearm with practiced efficiency. Her hands moved automatically, field stripping and reassembling the weapon in the darkness. Her father had taught her this. Her father had taught her many things that no one on this base knew about. Things that had nothing to do with counting boxes and processing requests. The moment will come, Tammy. His voice was so clear in her memory. It always comes. The only question is whether you will be ready. 6 years she had been waiting. 6 years of being invisible, of being underestimated, of watching others get credit for work she had done. She was beginning to wonder if the moment would ever arrive, or if she would spend her entire career in the shadows, a ghost of a different kind. Outside, somewhere beyond the wire, the desert held its secrets. And one of those secrets was already choosing its next target. Morning came with the sound of helicopters. Tamara was already at the warehouse by 0530, sorting through overnight requests before the heat made the metal building unbearable. She had not slept well. Dreams of her father, of the training sessions in their Baltimore backyard, of his voice telling her to watch and wait and be ready. The base loudspeaker crackled. All personnel report to the main assembly area for command briefing. Repeat, all personnel to main assembly. Tamara set down her clipboard and joined the stream of soldiers moving toward the center of FOB Hammer. She took her usual position at the back of the formation, where supply specialists and support staff gathered like afterthoughts. Captain Thornton stood on a wooden platform, his presence commanding even before he spoke. Listen up. As of last night, we have credible intelligence that the sniper known as the Ghost of Mosul has moved into our operational area. This is not a drill, and this is not a rumor. This man has killed 3 officers in 3 weeks, all from distances exceeding 800 meters. A murmur rippled through the assembled soldiers. Tamara watched Thornton's face, the tight set of his jaw, the way his eyes moved across his people. Effective immediately, Thornton continued, all officers will vary their movement patterns. No predictable routes. No scheduled outdoor appearances. Squad leaders will brief their teams on specific protocols. Questions. Tamara saw something the others did not see. From her position at the back, she had a clear view of the entire assembly area, and she noticed the gaps. The blind spots in the perimeter watch. The angles where a skilled shooter could set up without being observed. Her father's training kicked in automatically, mapping fields of fire and defensive vulnerabilities. She considered raising her hand, considered pointing out what she saw. Then she caught Crenshaw's eye from across the formation. He smirked at her, that dismissive twist of his lips that said he knew exactly what she was and what she was not. She kept her hand down. After the briefing, Tamara made her way to the medical supply building to deliver a shipment of bandages and 4 bags. Staff Sergeant Neka Adebayo signed for the delivery, her name tape identifying her as a combat medic. Oyeleran, Adebayo said, studying the manifest. Nigerian name. Yes, Staff Sergeant. My father immigrated from Lagos before I was born. Adebayo smiled. Mine came from Abuja. Small world. She handed back the clipboard, then paused. You move differently than most supply soldiers, Oyeleran. You stand like someone who has been trained. Tamara felt a cold spike in her chest. I do not know what you mean, Staff Sergeant. Adebayo's eyes held hers for a moment longer than necessary. Of course you do not. Have a good day, Specialist. Walking back to the warehouse, Tamara's mind raced. What had Adebayo seen? What had she given away? 6 years of being invisible, and now, in the span of 30 seconds, someone had looked right through her. That evening, after her duties were complete, Tamara made her way to the firing range. It was late enough that the range was empty, just the way she needed it. She drew her sidearm and settled into her stance, the stance her father had drilled into her since she was 12 years old. Breathe. Focus. Squeeze. The first shot hit center mass on the silhouette target. The second hit half an inch to the left. The third, fourth, and fifth created a tight grouping that would have qualified her for any competitive shooting team in the country. She moved through reload drills, tactical transitions, shooting while moving. Her body remembered what her mind tried to forget. Her father had been Nigerian Army Special Forces before he immigrated, before he married her mother, before he became a quiet accountant in Baltimore who happened to train his daughter like a soldier every weekend of her childhood. Well, damn. Tamara spun, weapon raised, to find Whitmore standing at the range entrance with his mouth hanging open. Darnell. She lowered the pistol. How long have you been standing there? Long enough. He walked toward her slowly, like approaching a wild animal. Tamara, what the hell? You shoot like that, and you're a working supply. Why are you not infantry? Why are you not special operations? She safed her weapon and holstered it. Because I did not want to be seen for what I can do with a gun. I wanted to be seen for what I can do with my mind. Whitmore stared at her. That is the craziest thing I have ever heard. My father spent his whole life being valued only for his ability to kill. When he came to America, he wanted more. He trained me so I would be prepared for anything. But he also taught me that violence is the last resort of the unimaginative. I joined Supply because I wanted to prove I could contribute without anyone knowing what else I was capable of. And how is that working out for you? Tamara thought about Crenshaw, about the soldiers who looked through her, about 6 years of being invisible. Not great, she admitted. Whitmore shook his head. Your secret is safe with me. But Tamara, if the moment ever comes when you need to be something more than a supply specialist, promise me you will not hesitate. Before she could answer, the base alarm began to wail. Both of them froze, then ran toward the sound of shouting voices. The news spread through FOB Hammer like wildfire. Another officer down. FOB Victory, just 12 kilometers away. The ghost had struck again, and this time he had left a message carved into the wooden post beside his victim. One word in Arabic. Coming. Tamara stood in the crowd of soldiers receiving the news, her heart pounding. She thought about Captain Thornton, about the security gaps she had noticed, about the warning she had been too afraid to give. The ghost was coming to FOB Hammer. She knew it with a certainty she could not explain, and she knew that if she was right, someone would die within 48 hours unless she found a way to make them listen. The next morning, FOB Hammer felt like a different place. Soldiers moved in pairs, eyes scanning rooftops and distant ridgelines. The easy laughter that usually filled the DFAC was replaced by quiet conversations and nervous glances. The ghost had announced his intentions, and everyone knew that somewhere beyond the wire, a scope was searching for its next target. Tamara arrived at the supply warehouse to find half her inventory team missing. She checked the duty roster and felt her stomach drop. Crenshaw had requisitioned her personnel for perimeter security details, citing the heightened threat level. She found him near the motor pool, briefing a group of soldiers that included 2 of her best workers. Sergeant Crenshaw, she said, keeping her voice professional. I need my team back. Supply operations cannot function with a skeleton crew. Crenshaw turned slowly, that familiar smirk spreading across his face. O'Yellerin, did you not hear? We have a sniper threat. Real soldiers are needed for real work. Your boxes can wait. The soldiers around him exchanged glances. A few of them chuckled. Sergeant, my supply operations support every unit on this FOB. If I fall behind, everyone falls behind. Ammunition, medical supplies, food, all of it flows through my warehouse. Crenshaw stepped toward her, lowering his voice just enough that the others could still hear. Let me make this simple for you, box girl. When the shooting starts, nobody is going to care about your inventory sheets. So why do you not go back to your little warehouse and let the adults handle the security situation? Tamara held his gaze. She could feel the anger building in her chest, the urge to show him exactly what she was capable of. Her father's voice whispered in her mind. Control. Always control. The enemy wants you to react. Make them wait. Understood, Sergeant, she said flatly. She turned and walked away, feeling the weight of their stares on her back. That night, Tamara worked alone until well past midnight. The shipment that should have taken 4 hours took 9. Her hands ached from moving crates. Her back screamed from lifting ammunition boxes, but she refused to fall behind. She refused to give Crenshaw the satisfaction. She was organizing medical supplies when she noticed something odd in the delivery manifest. A shipment of optical equipment had been routed through FOB Hammer 3 weeks ago, destined for an intelligence unit that did not exist in any official database. She filed the anomaly away in her mind, another piece of a puzzle she did not yet understand. The following day brought a supply convoy run to a forward checkpoint. Tamara rode in the third vehicle, her eyes constantly moving across the terrain. The other soldiers in the truck talked about home, about girlfriends and football games and cold beer. Tamara watched the road. She saw it before anyone else did. A patch of ground near the roadside that looked wrong. The color was slightly off, the texture too uniform. Her father had shown her photographs of IED concealment techniques when she was 15. She had memorized every one. Stop the convoy. She shouted to the driver. "Stop now." The driver slammed the brakes. The vehicles behind them screeched to a halt. Soldiers piled out, weapons raised, scanning for threats. "What is it?" the convoy commander demanded. "What did you see?" Tamara pointed to the patch of disturbed earth 20 meters ahead. "There. Possible IED." The explosive ordnance team moved forward with their equipment. 20 minutes later, they confirmed a buried artillery shell wired to a pressure plate. If the convoy had continued, the lead vehicle would have driven directly over it. "Good eyes," the convoy commander said, looking at Tamara with new respect. "How did you spot that?" Before she could answer, Crenshaw's voice cut through the moment. "Lucky guess. She probably saw a goat or something and panicked. He had arrived with the security detail, late as usual. Either way, we are behind schedule. Let us move." The convoy commander frowned, but said nothing. The soldiers loaded back into their vehicles. Tamara caught Whitmore's eye across the convoy. He shook his head slowly, his expression saying what words could not. That evening, Tamara sat outside the supply warehouse, watching the sun sink below the horizon. Staff Sergeant Adebayo found her there, dropping onto an empty crate beside her. "I heard about the convoy," Adebayo said. "That was not luck. You knew exactly what you were looking at." Tamara said nothing. Adebayo continued. "I have been watching you, O'Yellerin. The way you move, the way you observe. You see things other people miss because you were trained to see them. My guess is your training started young, probably from someone who knew what they were doing. Military background, special operations, maybe." Tamara turned to look at her. "What do you want, Staff Sergeant?" "I want you to stop hiding." Adebayo's voice was gentle but firm. "Whatever happened to make you think you needed to be invisible, it is time to let that go. The moment is going to come, O'Yellerin. It always does. And when it does, you need to be ready to show them who you really are." The base alarm shattered the evening quiet. Both women jumped to their feet as soldiers began running toward the command center. The news came in fragments. Another attack. FOB Razor, 8 kilometers to the north. This time the Ghost had killed 2 officers with a single shot, the bullet passing through one and into another. And this time, he had left another message. Tomorrow. Tamara stood in the crowd of soldiers, her mind racing. She had been mapping the Ghost's attacks in her head, tracking the patterns, the distances, the timing. And now, with sudden and terrible clarity, she understood what she was seeing. The Ghost was not randomly selecting targets. He was circling. Each attack brought him closer to FOB Hammer, like a predator tightening the noose around its prey. She knew where he would strike next. She knew when. And she knew that no one would believe her if she tried to tell them. Tamara spent the night building her case. She spread a map across her quarters floor and marked every known attack attributed to the Ghost of Mosul. Times, locations, distances, angles of approach. By 0300, the pattern was undeniable. The Ghost was moving in a clockwise spiral, each attack bringing him closer to the center. And at the center of that spiral sat FOB Hammer. She documented everything. Attack vectors, likely observation points, vulnerable areas within the base perimeter. She identified 3 locations where a skilled sniper could set up with clear lines of fire to high traffic areas. One of them, an abandoned building 300 meters beyond the eastern wire, had a perfect view of the walkway between the command center and the motor pool. The walkway Captain Thornton used every day at 1400 hours. At 0700, Tamara requested a meeting with First Sergeant Kepler through proper channels. She dressed in her cleanest uniform, organized her notes, and rehearsed what she would say. This was her chance. If she could make Kepler understand, he could take it to the captain directly. The meeting was scheduled for 0930. At 0915, Crenshaw intercepted her outside the command building. "Where do you think you're going, O'Yellerin?" "I have a meeting with First Sergeant Kepler, Sergeant." "Official business." Crenshaw's eyes narrowed. "What kind of official business does a supply specialist have with the First Sergeant?" "Security concerns, Sergeant, regarding the sniper threat." For a moment, something flickered across Crenshaw's face. Then the smirk returned. "Security concerns." He laughed and turned to the 2 soldiers flanking him. "You hear that? Box Girl has security concerns. He stepped closer, his voice dropping. Listen to me carefully. You're a supply clerk. You count things and move things. That is all you do. That is all you will ever do. First Sergeant Kepler does not have time for your fantasies. This is not a fantasy, Sergeant. I have documentation. Pattern analysis. The ghost is targeting this base, and I know how he operates. Crenshaw snatched the folder from her hands before she could react. He flipped through the pages, his expression shifting from amusement to something darker. You made maps. He held up her analysis for the other soldiers to see. She made little maps with dots and arrows. What is next, O'Yellerin? You can tell us you cracked the enemy's secret code. The soldiers laughed. Tamara felt heat rising to her face. Give that back, Sergeant. Crenshaw tossed the folder on the ground. Papers scattered across the dusty concrete. Here is what is going to happen. You're going to pick up your little art project, go back to your warehouse, and never waste the first sergeant's time again. If I hear you are spreading paranoid rumors about sniper attacks, I will write you up for causing undue alarm. Are we clear? Tamara stood frozen, watching her work scattered in the dirt. Soldiers walked past, some glancing down at the papers, none stopping to help. I said, are we clear, Specialist? Yes, Sergeant. Crystal clear. She knelt and gathered her papers one by one. By the time she looked up, Crenshaw was gone. That afternoon, Tamara found Whitmore in the DFAC. She told him everything. The pattern, the analysis, Crenshaw's interception. Whitmore listened without interrupting, his food growing cold on his tray. You need to go over his head, Whitmore said when she finished. Find another way to get to Kepler. Or go directly to the captain. And say what? That a supply specialist thinks she knows more about tactical threats than the security team. Crenshaw already poisoned that well. If I push harder, I will look crazy. Or worse, insubordinate. So what? You just give up. Tamara stared at her hands. I did not know what else to do, Darnell. I tried. Nobody wants to hear from someone like me. That evening, she forced herself to attend the security briefing. She stood at her usual place in the back and listened to the intelligence officer outline new patrol routes designed to counter the sniper threat. None of them addressed the vulnerabilities she had identified. None of them accounted for the abandoned building to the east. After the briefing, she watched Captain Thornton walk back toward the command center. He moved with confidence, unaware of the danger she believed was coming. She wanted to run after him, to grab his arm and make him listen. But she could already hear Crenshaw's voice in her head. Box Girl. Fantasies. Little maps with dots and arrows. She returned to her quarters and sat in the darkness, her father's words echoing in her memory. The moment will come. But what her father never told her was what to do when the moment came and no one would let her act. Outside, the base settled into uneasy quiet. Guards doubled on the perimeter. Officers varied their routes as ordered. And somewhere beyond the wire, in a building that everyone had forgotten to watch, a rifle was being assembled. Tamara pulled out her analysis one more time. She had circled the time in red ink. 1,400 hours. 40 hours from now. And there was nothing she could do to stop what was coming. 32 hours remained when Tamara made one final attempt. She rewrote her entire analysis from memory, organizing it more clearly this time. Executive summary on top. Supporting evidence beneath. She even included a hand-drawn diagram of the abandoned building and its sight lines to the base. If Kepler would not see her, she would find another way. She waited outside the command building until she spotted Captain Thornton's aide, a young lieutenant named Brennan. She approached him with her folder extended. Lieutenant, I need 5 minutes of the captain's time. This is urgent intelligence regarding the sniper threat. Brennan barely glanced at her rank insignia before shaking his head. The captain's schedule is full, Specialist. Submit your concerns through your chain of command. I tried, sir. My chain of command is not listening. Then perhaps there's a reason for that. Brennan turned away. Good day, Specialist. Tamara stood alone in the morning sun, her folder hanging at her side. She had done everything right. Followed protocol. Gathered evidence. Suit Brupe Chanels. And none of it mattered. To them, she was invisible, a supply clerk playing soldier. She walked back to the warehouse in a daze. The weight of failure pressed down on her shoulders like a physical force. Inside, the familiar smell of cardboard and dust greeted her. Crates stacked in perfect rows. Inventory sheets filed in alphabetical order. Her entire world reduced to boxes and numbers. Whitmore found her sitting on the floor between two pallets of MREs, her knees pulled to her chest. Tamara. He knelt beside her. What happened? Nobody will listen, Darnell. She looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. I have the answer. I know what is coming, and nobody will even let me speak. Whitmore sat down next to her. Talk to me. Tell me everything your father taught you. Tell me why you're so sure. So she did. For the next hour, Tamara told him about her childhood. About weekends spent learning to read terrain and identify threats. About her father's stories from his time in Nigerian Special Forces, the missions he could not discuss and the lessons he could. About the philosophy he drilled into her from the time she could walk. Violence is the last resort of the unimaginative, she recited. But when violence comes, you must be ready. You must see it before it sees you. She told him about her decision to join a supply, how she wanted to prove that a woman could contribute to the army without being defined by combat, how she wanted to be valued for her mind, not her ability to pull a trigger. And how is that working out? Whitmore asked gently. Tamara laughed bitterly. I spent 6 years being invisible. 6 years watching men, like Crenshaw, take credit for my work. 6 years waiting for someone to see me. And now, when I finally have something to offer, something that could save lives, they still refuse to look. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, maybe you are waiting for the wrong thing. What do you mean? You keep waiting for permission, for someone to validate you, to see you. He met her eyes. But your father did not train you to wait for permission. He trained you to act. Tamara shook her head. If I act without authorization, I destroy my career. Insubordination. Conduct unbecoming. Crenshaw would bury me. And if you do not act, the question hung in the air between them. Tamara thought about Captain Thornton walking across the open ground, about the red that she had imagined dancing on his back, about the shot that would echo across FOB Hammer if she did nothing. I cannot, she whispered. I cannot just do nothing. Then do not. That evening, Tamara spread her analysis across her bed one final time. She studied the diagram of the abandoned building. She calculated angles and distances. She checked her watch. 20 hours. She picked up her analysis and walked to the burn barrel behind the warehouse. For a long moment, she held the papers over the flames, watching the heat ripple the edges. Then she pulled them back. She could not burn them. She could not give up, but she also could not make anyone listen. Unless a thought formed in her mind. Dangerous, desperate, possibly insane. If no one would let her warn them, then she would have to be in position when the moment came. She would have to see what they refused to see. And if the ghost appeared, if that red dot materialized on Captain Thornton's back, she would be the only thing standing between her commander and death. She folded the papers carefully and tucked them under her mattress. Tomorrow at 1400 hours, she would be exactly where she needed to be. Not to warn anyone, to act. Her father's voice echoed one final time. The moment will come. The only question is whether you will be ready. Tamara checked her sidearm, cleaned it, loaded it. She was ready. The day arrived under a pale, Iraqi sky. Tamara woke at 0500, her body tense with anticipation. 9 hours until 1400. 9 hours until the moment her father had promised would come. She went through her morning routine with mechanical precision. Showered, dressed, ate breakfast she could not taste. Every movement felt weighted with significance, as if the universe was watching her prepare. At 0700, she reported to the supply warehouse and began her duties. Inventory checks, shipment logs, requisition forms. The familiar work steadied her hands but could not quiet her mind. She kept glancing at her watch, watching the minutes crawl past. At 0900, she found an excuse to visit the command building. A signature needed on a supply manifest. She lingered in the hallway, listening to fragments of conversation from the operations center. Captain Thornton has a meeting at the motor pool at 1400, someone said. Wants to inspect the new vehicle shipment personally. Tamara's blood went cold. 1400. The motor pool. Exactly as she had predicted. Thornton would walk across the open ground between the command building and the motor pool, exposed for exactly 47 seconds. 47 seconds during which a skilled sniper in the abandoned building would have a perfect shot. She tried one more time. She approached the operations center door and requested to speak with someone about a security concern. The sergeant on duty barely looked up. Submit it through your chain of command, specialist. This is urgent. Captain Thornton may be in danger this afternoon. The sergeant finally met her eyes. His expression was tired, annoyed. Specialist, we have received approximately 30 warnings about the captain being in danger this week. Everyone is scared. I understand, but we have security protocols in place. Now please, let us do our jobs. Tamara walked away with her heart pounding. The clock showed 09:45. 4 hours and 15 minutes. She found Staff Sergeant Adebayo outside the medical building, smoking a cigarette in the narrow strip of shade along the wall. You look like someone walking to their own funeral, Adebayo said. Tamara sat down beside her. I know when the ghost is going to strike. I know where. I know the target. And no one will listen to me. Adebayo took a long drag and exhaled slowly. So what are you going to do about it? I'm going to be there. When it happens, I'm going to put myself in position to act. Adebayo studied her for a long moment. That is either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. A silence stretched between them. Then Adebayo said, I know about your father, O'Yelleran. Tamara's head snapped toward her. What? Your medical records. Emergency contact listed as Chukwemeka O'Yelleran. I looked him up. Nigerian Army, retired. Specialized in counter-sniper operations before he immigrated. Adebayo crushed her cigarette under her boot. I have known since your first week on this base. Tamara could not speak. All this time, all the hiding, the careful invisibility, the years of pretending to be nothing more than a supply clerk. And Adebayo had known from the beginning. Why did you not say anything? Tamara finally managed. Because it was not my secret to tell. Adebayo turned to face her fully. I have been waiting, O'Yelleran, waiting for you to claim who you really are. I thought maybe I could nudge you along, help you find your confidence. But time ran out. She glanced toward the command building. The moment is here, is it not? Yes. Then stop waiting for permission. Stop waiting for someone to see you. Adebayo gripped her shoulder. You see the threat. You have the training. You're the only one who could stop this. So stop asking and start doing. Tamara felt something shift inside her chest. A lock turning. A door opening. 6 years of hiding, of shrinking, of making herself small so others would not feel threatened. And for what? So she could watch a good man die because no one would let her speak. No more. She stood up. Her hands were steady now. Her mind was clear. Thank you, Staff Sergeant. Do not thank me. Adebayo's eyes were fierce. Save him. Then we will talk. Tamara checked her watch. 13:22. 38 minutes. She walked toward the supply warehouse, but she did not go inside. Instead, she positioned herself at the eastern corner, where she had a clear view of the walkway between the command building and the motor pool. She also had a clear view of the abandoned building 300 meters beyond the wire. She checked her sidearm. Loaded. Safety on. Ready. The sun climbed higher. The shadows shortened. Soldiers moved through the base, oblivious to the countdown ticking in Tamara's head. 13:57. The command building door opened. Captain Thornton stepped out into the sunlight, adjusting his cap as he began walking toward the motor pool. His aide said something to him, and he nodded, his attention focused on whatever business awaited him. He had no idea he was walking into a kill zone. Tamara's eyes moved to the abandoned building. She scanned the dark windows, the crumbling rooftop, the shadows where a rifle could hide. And then she saw it, a glint of glass, a scope catching the sun for just a fraction of a second. Her father's voice thundered in her mind. The moment is here. Tamara moved. Time slowed to a crawl. Tamara's legs pumped beneath her as she sprinted across the open ground. Every detail crystallized with impossible clarity. the dust rising from her boots, the weight of her sidearm against her thigh, the distant shouts of soldiers who had not yet understood what was happening. Captain Thornton was 20 meters ahead, still walking, still unaware. His back was a perfect target against the pale concrete of the motor pool building. And there it was, the red dot. It appeared on his back like a bloody fingerprint, dancing slightly as the sniper made his final adjustments. Tamara had seen that dance before in her father's training videos. The shooter was exhaling, steadying his aim, preparing to squeeze the trigger. She had less than 2 seconds. "Captain, get down," she screamed. Thornton began to turn, confusion on his face. The red dot slid across his back toward his spine. Wrong move. If he turned, the shot would hit center mass instead of his shoulder. He would die instantly. Tamara did not think. She launched herself through the air. The crack of the rifle split the world in half. She hit Thornton at full speed, her body slamming into his with enough force to drive them both to the ground. The bullet meant for his spine cut through the air where his chest had been a fraction of a second earlier. She heard it pass, a supersonic whisper that kissed the edge of her ear. They hit the concrete hard. Tamara landed on top of Thornton, her body covering his, her face pressed against the back of his neck. She could feel his heart pounding through his uniform, matching the thunder of her own. "Stay down," she hissed. "Sniper. Eastern building. Do not move." A second shot cracked across the base. Concrete exploded 2 feet from Tamara's head, spraying dust and fragments across her back. She pressed herself flatter against Thornton, making her body as small a target as possible while still shielding him. The base erupted into chaos. Alarms wailed. Soldiers scrambled for cover. Someone was shouting orders about the guard towers. Return fire began crackling toward the abandoned building. The sharp reports of M4 rifles answered by the deeper boom of the mounted .50 caliber. Thornton tried to move beneath her. "Specialist, what the hell is happening?" "Stay down, sir." She kept her voice calm despite the terror clawing at her chest. "He is repositioning. There may be another shot." "Who are you?" "Specialist O'Yelleran, sir." "Supply." A third shot never came. The sustained fire from the guard towers had either killed the sniper or driven him to retreat. But Tamara did not move. She would not move until she was certain. Seconds stretched into eternity. The gunfire tapered off. Voices shouted all clear signals across the base. Still Tamara remained, her body a shield, her eyes scanning the distant building for any sign of movement. Finally, the base loudspeaker crackled. "All clear." "Repeat, all clear." Sniper position neutralized. Medical teams to the central walkway. Only then did Tamara allow herself to breathe. "Specialist." Thornton's voice was rough with dust and shock. "You could get off me now." Tamara hesitated. Her father's training screamed at her to wait, to be certain, to never assume safety until it was confirmed 3 times over. "No, sir," she said. "Not yet." Thornton fell silent beneath her. Perhaps he understood. Perhaps he simply recognized that arguing with a woman who had just saved his life was pointless. 30 seconds later, First Sergeant Kepler appeared at the edge of Tamara's vision, flanked by a security team. He took in the scene with wide eyes. The captain on the ground, the supplies specialist lying on top of him, the bullet crater in the concrete 2 feet away. "Area secure, specialist," Kepler said. "You can stand down." Tamara pushed herself up slowly, her muscles screaming from the impact. She extended a hand to Thornton and helped him to his feet. He stood unsteadily, brushing dust from his uniform, staring at her as if seeing her for the first time. Because he was Specialist O'Yelleran. His voice was quiet, almost wondering. "You just saved my life." "Yes, sir." "How did you know?" Before she could answer, medics swarmed around them, checking for injuries, asking questions. Soldiers gathered at the edges of the scene, whispering and pointing. And through the crowd, Tamara saw 2 faces. Whitmore, his expression caught between terror and pride. And Crenshaw, his face pale, his mouth hanging open, his arrogance stripped away by the undeniable truth of what had just happened. The supply specialist had done what no one else could do. The box girl had saved the captain's life, and nothing would ever be the same. The debriefing room smelled of stale coffee and tension. Tamara sat at a metal table across from three officers she had never spoken to before. Intelligence, security, and Captain Thornton himself, who had insisted on being present despite the medics urging him to rest. Start from the beginning, the intelligence officer said. His name, Tape Red Patterson. Tell us everything. Tamara took a breath and began. She explained the pattern analysis, the clockwise spiral of attacks, the timing intervals, the abandoned building she had identified as the most likely sniper position. She laid out her methodology step by step, watching their expressions shift from skepticism to surprise to something approaching respect. When she finished, Patterson leaned back in his chair. You identified the threat, predicted the timing, and pinpointed the location. All from supply requisition data and observation. And pattern recognition training, Tamara said. My father was Nigerian Army Special Forces. Counter-sniper operations. He trained me from childhood. The security officer, a major named Hollins, exchanged a glance with Patterson. Why is this not in your personnel file? It is not relevant to my MOS, sir. Not relevant. Hollins let out a short laugh. Specialist, you just performed threat analysis that our intelligence section missed completely. I would say that is relevant. Thornton had been silent throughout the debriefing. Now he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of command. Specialist O'Yellerin, you tried to report this through proper channels. What happened? Tamara hesitated. The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Answer the question, Specialist. That is an order. She met his eyes. I attempted to bring my analysis to First Sergeant Kepler yesterday morning, sir. I was intercepted by Sergeant First Class Crenshaw. He dismissed my concerns and threatened to write me up for causing undue alarm if I pursued the matter further. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Thornton's jaw tightened. Go on. I also attempted to reach your aide, Lieutenant Brennan, this morning. He declined to pass my concerns to you. I attempted to alert the operations center directly. I was told to submit through my chain of command. She paused. The same chain of command that had already refused to listen. Patterson was writing furiously. Major Hollins looked like he had swallowed something bitter. Thornton sat motionless, but Tamara could see the fury building behind his eyes. Let me understand this clearly, Thornton said slowly. You identified a credible threat to my life. You attempted to report it through multiple channels. And at every turn, you were blocked or dismissed. Yes, sir. Because you are a supply specialist. Yes, sir. Thornton stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the concrete floor. He walked to the window and stared out at the base, his back rigid. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. Give me First Sergeant Kepler, and get me Sergeant First Class Crenshaw. Now, Tamara remained seated as Patterson left to carry out the order. Major Hollins was reviewing her analysis, shaking his head slowly. This is solid work, Specialist Hollins said. Better than solid. If this had reached us 24 hours ago, we could have set a trap. Could have caught the ghost instead of just driving him off. Is that confirmed, sir? But he escaped. Hollins nodded grimly. QRF found the position. Rifle was gone. We recovered shell casings and some equipment, but the shooter vanished. He's still out there. Tamara absorbed this news. The ghost had survived. He would kill again. But at least today, he had not killed Captain Thornton. The door opened and Patterson returned, followed by Kepler and Crenshaw. Kepler looked confused. Crenshaw looked terrified. His eyes found Tamara, and something flickered across his face. Hatred, fear, the desperate calculation of a man watching his career crumble. First Sergeant, Sergeant First Class. Thornton turned from the window. I have just learned that Specialist O'Yellerin attempted to warn us about today's attack. I have also learned that her warnings were suppressed. He let the words hang. I want to know why. Kepler straightened. Sir, I was not aware of any formal warning from Specialist O'Yellerin. She came to you yesterday, First Sergeant. Kepler's face went pale. He glanced at Crenshaw. I was told it was handled through other channels. All eyes turned to Crenshaw. The silence stretched. Tamara watched the man who had tormented her for months, who had called her box girl and stolen credit for her work and threatened her career. He stood frozen, his arrogance stripped away, his excuses dying on his lips. "Sergeant First Class Crenshaw," Thornton said quietly, "did you prevent Specialist O'Yelleran from reporting a security threat?" Crenshaw's mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Sir, I did not think her concerns were credible. She's just a supply clerk. She does not have the training or expertise to make those kinds of assessments." Thornton stepped closer to him. "She has more training than you know, more expertise than you bothered to discover. And she was right." He leaned in until his face was inches from Crenshaw's. "Your judgment nearly got me killed today, Sergeant. What do you have to say for yourself?" Crenshaw had nothing to say. He had nothing left at all. The formation assembled at 1700 hours. Every soldier at FOB Hammer stood at attention in the fading light, confusion rippling through the ranks. Unscheduled formations usually meant bad news. Casualties, new threats, changes in deployment. No one expected what came next. Captain Thornton walked to the front of the formation, his uniform still bearing traces of dust from the concrete where he had fallen. Tamara stood in her usual place at the back, her heart pounding. She did not know what was coming, only that Thornton had ordered her to attend. "At ease," Thornton called out. The formation relaxed slightly, but tension remained. This afternoon, this base was attacked. Most of you heard the shots. Some of you returned fire. What you do not know is that I was the target. A murmur swept through the soldiers. Eyes widened, heads turned. "The sniper, known as the Ghost of Mosul, had me in his sights," Thornton continued. "I was walking across open ground, completely unaware. I had approximately 2 seconds to live." He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. "I am standing here now because of one soldier who saw the threat when no one else did. One soldier who ran into the line of fire to shield me with her own body." Tamara felt the eyes beginning to find her in the back of the formation. "Specialist O'Yelleran," Thornton called. Front and center. The crowd parted as Tamara walked forward. Her legs felt wooden, her face burning under the scrutiny of 200 soldiers. She stopped in front of Thornton and saluted. "At ease, Specialist." Thornton turned to address the formation again. "What most of you do not know is that Specialist O'Yelleran did more than react in the moment. She identified the threat days ago. She conducted pattern analysis that predicted today's attack with remarkable accuracy. She tried to warn us through proper channels." He paused, and his voice hardened. She was ignored, dismissed, blocked from reaching command by individuals who decided that a supply specialist could not possibly have valuable intelligence. Individuals who let their assumptions about her role blind them to her capabilities. Thornton turned slightly. "Sergeant First Class Crenshaw." Front and center. The crowd shifted again as Crenshaw walked forward. His face was ashen, his movements stiff. He stopped beside Tamara, but did not look at her. "Sergeant First Class Crenshaw," Thornton said, his voice carrying across the silent formation. "You intercepted Specialist O'Yelleran's attempt to report a credible security threat. You dismissed her concerns based on her MOS rather than the merit of her analysis. You threatened her career if she pursued the matter further. Is this accurate?" Crenshaw swallowed. "Sir, I made a judgment call based on available information." "Answer the question, Sergeant. Is it accurate?" A long pause. Then, barely audible. "Yes, sir. Your judgment call nearly cost me my life." Thornton let that statement hang in the air. It also potentially cost us the opportunity to capture or kill a sniper who has murdered 5 American officers. He turned to face the full formation. "Let this be a lesson to every soldier here. Competence does not care about rank. Intelligence does not care about MOS. When someone brings you a concern, you evaluate it on its merits, not on your assumptions about who they are." He turned back to Crenshaw. "You are relieved of your duties effective immediately, pending a full investigation. Report to Major Hollins for further instructions." Crenshaw saluted mechanically, his face empty. "Yes, sir." He walked away through the silent formation. No one spoke. No one moved. Tamara watched him go, waiting to feel satisfaction or vindication. Instead, she felt nothing. Crenshaw was not her enemy. He never had been. He was simply a symptom of a system that refused to see people like her. Thornton's voice softened as he turned back to Tamara. Specialist O'Yelleran, what you did today demonstrated extraordinary courage, tactical awareness, and selflessness. You identified a threat that our intelligence section missed. You acted decisively under fire. You placed yourself between danger and your commanding officer without hesitation. He reached into his pocket and produced a unit coin, the symbol of recognition within the military community. This is not enough, he said. Not nearly enough. But it is a start. On behalf of everyone at FOB Hammer, thank you for saving my life. He pressed the coin into her palm and shook her hand. The formation erupted into applause. Soldiers who had never spoken to her before were clapping, cheering, calling her name. Tamara stood in the center of it all, the coin warm in her hand, and finally allowed herself to believe it. She was no longer invisible. She never would be again. After the formation dispersed, Kepler approached her. His expression was heavy with shame. Specialist, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. I should have listened. I should have pushed harder to hear your concerns myself instead of trusting that they were being handled. Tamara considered his words. Yes, First Sergeant. You should have. He nodded slowly, accepting the rebuke. For what it is worth, that will not happen again. Not with you. Not with anyone. He extended his hand. You have my respect, O'Yelleran. You earned it the hard way. She shook his hand. It was a start. The next morning, Tamara received a summons to Captain Thornton's office. She had barely slept. The events of the previous day played on repeat in her mind, the red dot, the sprint, the impact, the applause. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that laser dancing on Thornton's back. Every time she opened them, she saw soldiers looking at her differently, speaking to her differently, seeing her. She arrived at the command building at 0800 sharp, her uniform pressed, her boots polished. The aide, Lieutenant Brennan, was waiting outside Thornton's door. He looked uncomfortable. Specialist O'Yelleran, he said. Before you go in, I wanted to say something. Tamara waited. I should have listened to you yesterday morning. Brennan's voice was tight with embarrassment. You tried to warn me, and I dismissed you without even hearing what you had to say. That was wrong. I'm sorry. Tamara studied him for a moment. This was the same man who had turned her away with barely a glance. The same man who had decided she was not worth 5 minutes of the captain's time. Thank you, Lieutenant, she said finally. I appreciate you saying that. Brennan nodded and opened the door. The captain will see you now. Thornton's office was Spartan. A desk, 2 chairs, maps on the walls, a photograph of a young woman in a silver frame. He stood as Tamara entered, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Please sit. She sat. Thornton remained standing for a moment, studying her with an expression she could not read. Then he sat as well. I spent most of last night reading your service record, he said. 6 years, 2 deployments, spotless performance reviews, no disciplinary issues. He paused. Also no commendations, no awards, no recognition of any kind. I did my job, sir. That was enough. Was it? Thornton leaned forward. Specialist, I have commanded soldiers for 15 years. I have learned to recognize potential. And I have also learned to recognize when potential is being wasted. He picked up a folder from his desk. Your supply efficiency ratings are the highest in theater. Your inventory accuracy is nearly perfect. You have been doing exceptional work in a role that most soldiers treat as a stepping stone or a punishment. Thank you, sir. I am not finished. He opened the folder. I also made some calls this morning. To Intelligence Command. To personnel. To some people I know who know how to recognize talent when they see it. He slid a document across the desk. This is a transfer request. Intelligence analysis. A position where your pattern recognition skills and tactical training would actually be utilized. Tamara stared at the document. The words blurred slightly. This is not charity, Thornton continued. This is not a reward. This is me recognizing that you're wasted in supply and putting you somewhere you can actually make a difference. He sat back. The choice is yours. You could stay in supply if that is what you want. But I think we both know you are capable of more. Tamara picked up the document. Her hands were trembling slightly. Sir, why are you doing this? Thornton was quiet for a moment. Then he turned the photograph on his desk toward her. The young woman had his eyes, his stubborn jaw. "My daughter," he said. "She is 23. Just graduated from West Point. Her whole life, people have tried to put her in boxes. Tell her what she can and cannot do because of who she is." He met Tamara's eyes. "I did not see you, O'Yellerin. I walked past you for months without ever once asking who you were or what you were capable of. That is my failure, and I will not make that mistake again." Tamara looked at the photograph, then at the transfer document, then at the man whose life she had saved. "I would be honored to accept, sir." Thornton smiled. It was the first time she had ever seen him smile. "Good. Report to Major Patterson at 0900 tomorrow. He will get you started." He stood and extended his hand. "Your father trained you well, specialist." Tamara shook his hand. "He trained me to wait for the moment, sir. And when it came, I did not wait. I moved." Thornton nodded slowly. "That is the difference between a good soldier and a great one, knowing when to stop waiting." After she left the command building, Tamara found Adebayo waiting outside, leaning against the concrete barrier with her arms crossed. "So," Adebayo said, "how did it go?" Tamara showed her the transfer document. Adebayo read it, then let out a low whistle. "Intelligence analysis." She handed it back. "I told you the moment would come." "You did." Tamara folded the document carefully. "Thank you for seeing me when no one else would." Adebayo shook her head. "I did not make you who you are, O'Yellerin. I just reminded you that you were allowed to be her." She pushed off the barrier. "Now go call your father. Tell him his daughter finally stopped hiding." Tamara watched her walk away, then pulled out her phone. She had not spoken to her father in 3 months. He answered on the second ring. "Tammy." His voice was warm, familiar, thousands of miles away and right beside her at the same time. "I heard what happened. The soldier network talks fast. Then I know." He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was thick with emotion. "I always knew who you were, Tammy. Now they know too." She closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her. For the first time in 6 years, she did not feel invisible. She felt seen. 3 days passed in a blur of activity. Tamara spent her mornings training her replacement in the supply warehouse, walking a young private named Okonkwo through the systems she had built over 2 deployments. Every shelf organized, every process documented, every shortcut explained. "You built all this yourself?" Okonkwo asked, staring at the color-coded inventory system. "It took time," Tamara said, "but it works. Take care of it." In the afternoons, she reported to Major Patterson for preliminary intelligence briefings. The work was fascinating, exactly what she had always wanted. Pattern analysis, threat assessment, the kind of problem-solving that engaged her mind fully. Patterson was demanding but fair, and he never once treated her like a supply clerk playing soldier. The evenings belonged to goodbyes. Whitmore found her outside the DFAC on her second to last night, watching the sunset paint the Iraqi sky in shades of orange and purple. "So this is really happening," he said, dropping onto the bench beside her. "You are actually leaving." "I'm actually leaving." He shook his head slowly. "I still cannot believe it. 6 years I have known you, and I had no idea you were some kind of tactical genius." "I am not a genius, Darnell. I just see things other people miss." "Yeah, that is what a genius would say." He bumped her shoulder with his. "I am going to miss you, Tamara. This place will not be the same without you." She smiled. "You will be fine. Just remember what I taught you about the inventory system. I meant as a friend, dummy." Tamara looked at him, this man who had been her ally through countless indignities, who had kept her secret, who had believed in her when no one else would. "I will miss you too, Darnell. Stay safe out here. Stay dangerous out there." They sat together until the sun disappeared, saying nothing more. Some friendships did not need words. The following morning, a stream of soldiers stopped by the warehouse to say goodbye. People who had never spoken to her before. People who had walked past her for months without a glance. They came to shake her hand, to wish her luck, to tell her that what she did had inspired them. One young female private lingered after the others left. "I just wanted to say," she began, then stopped, struggling with the words. "What you did. It showed me that we can be more than what they expect us to be, that we do not have to accept the boxes they put us in." Tamara studied her young face, saw the same frustration she had carried for 6 years. What is your name, Private? Rodriguez, Specialist. Private Maria Rodriguez. What is your MOS, Rodriguez? 68 Whiskey. Combat Medic. Tamara nodded. That is a good MOS, important work. But whatever else you are, whatever else you want to be, do not let anyone tell you it is not possible. She put a hand on the private's shoulder. The moment will come for you too. Be ready for it. Rodriguez straightened. Yes, Specialist. I will. Watching her walk away, Tamara thought about all the soldiers like Rodriguez scattered across the army. Women and men in support roles, overlooked and underestimated, carrying potential that no one bothered to see. Maybe her story would reach some of them. Maybe it would give them permission to be more. That afternoon, Kepler presented her with a unit coin at a small ceremony outside the command building. First Sergeant coin, he said, for exceptional service and uncommon valor. You earned this, O'Yellerin. Thank you, First Sergeant. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. I put in a recommendation for an Army Commendation Medal. It has to go through channels. Might take a while, but I wanted you to know. Tamara was genuinely surprised. I appreciate that, First Sergeant, but I did not do it for medals. I know. That is exactly why you deserve one. Her last stop was the medical building, where Adebayo was elbow-deep in supply inventory of her own. Staff Sergeant, Tamara said from the doorway. I wanted to say goodbye. Adebayo looked up and smiled. The woman who saved FOB Hammer, gracing my humble medical station. I am honored. Stop. Never. Adebayo set down her clipboard and crossed the room. She pulled Tamara into a hug, brief but fierce. You go show them what you can do, O'Yellerin. Make us proud. I will try. Do not try. Do. Adebayo pulled back, her eyes serious. And remember, you are not special because of what happened 3 days ago. You were always special. It just took the rest of them a while to notice. Tamara nodded, not trusting her voice. That evening, she packed her quarters for the last time. Her uniforms folded with precision. Her personal effects sorted into boxes and tucked into the pocket of her fresh uniform, her father's old Nigerian army patch. She had kept it hidden for 6 years. Tomorrow, she would wear it openly. Outside her window, FOB Hammer settled into the rhythms of another night. Guards changed shifts. Generators hummed. Somewhere, soldiers laughed about something she would never hear. She had arrived here invisible. She was leaving seen. It was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything. Dawn broke over FOB Hammer for the last time. Tamara stood beside the transport helicopter with her bags at her feet, watching the base come alive around her. Soldiers moving to morning duties. The smell of diesel and dust. The distant clatter of the DFAC preparing breakfast. All of it familiar. All of it already fading into memory. Captain Thornton appeared through the morning haze, walking toward her with purpose. She straightened instinctively, but he waved off the salute before she could complete it. At ease, Specialist. I'm not here for formalities. He stopped in front of her, hands clasped behind his back. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The helicopter's rotors began their slow wind-up, filling the silence with mechanical thunder. I wanted to see you off personally, Thornton said, and to tell you something I should have said days ago. Sir, he met her eyes. You did not just save my life, O'Yellerin. You changed the way I see my own command. I have been leading soldiers for 15 years, and I thought I knew how to recognize talent. He shook his head slowly. I was wrong. I walked past you for months. I let a system that values appearances over substance keep me blind to what was right in front of me. Tamara did not know what to say. Thornton continued. My daughter called me last night. I told her what happened. I told her about you. He paused. She said to tell you thank you, not just for saving her father, but for showing her that the path she has chosen is the right one. That women like her, like you, can make a difference even when the system tries to make them invisible. Please tell her I said she is welcome, sir, and that she should never let anyone put her in a box. I will. Thornton extended his hand. Good luck at your new posting, Specialist. I have a feeling this is just the beginning for you. She shook his hand firmly. Thank you, sir, for everything. He nodded once, then turned and walked back toward the command building. Tamara watched him go, this man whose life had intersected with hers for the span of a heartbeat, whose survival had changed everything. The helicopter crew chief signaled for boarding. Tamara picked up her bags and climbed inside, settling into the canvas seat beside a window. As the rotors reached full speed and the aircraft lifted off, she pressed her face to the glass and watched FOB Hammer shrink below. The supply warehouse where she had spent 2 years being invisible. The walkway where she had sprinted toward death. The spot on the concrete where she had shielded Thornton with her body. Someone had placed a small stone there, she noticed. A marker, a memory. Then the helicopter banked, and FOB Hammer disappeared behind a ridge of brown hills. The flight to her new posting took 2 hours. Tamara spent most of it in silence, watching the Iraqi landscape scroll past beneath her. She thought about her father, about the years of training he had given her, about the moment he had promised would come. She thought about her mother, who had never understood why her husband insisted on teaching their daughter to fight, but had supported them anyway. She thought about all the versions of herself she had been over the past 6 years, and all the versions she might become. The helicopter touched down at Forward Operating Base Shield, a larger installation with permanent buildings and paved roads. A sergeant was waiting on the landing pad, clipboard in hand. Specialist O'Yelleran, he called over the rotor wash. Welcome to intelligence. I am Sergeant First Class Odom. Major Patterson told me to expect you. Tamara grabbed her bags and followed him across the tarmac. The intelligence building was a squat concrete structure bristling with antennas. Inside, it hummed with activity. Analysts at computer stations. Maps covering every wall. The quiet intensity of people doing important work. Odom led her to a desk near the back. This is your station. Patterson wants you to start with the pattern analysis on the ghost of Mosul. He said you have a head start on that one. Tamara sat down at the desk. A computer. A stack of files. A clean notebook waiting to be filled. She opened the top file and found the intelligence reports she had pieced together on her own, now officially compiled and expanded with data from across the theater. Odom lingered for a moment. I read your after-action report, he said. What you did at FOB Hammer. That took guts. I did what needed to be done, Sergeant. He nodded slowly. That is exactly what Patterson said you would say. He tapped the desk. Welcome to the team, O'Yelleran. We are glad to have you. He walked away, leaving her alone with the files. Tamara turned to the first page, and something caught her eye. A new report, dated 2 days ago. Fingerprint analysis from the rifle recovered at the ghost position. They had identified him. She read the name, the background, the history. A former Iraqi army sniper who had lost his family in an airstrike. A man driven by grief and rage to hunt American officers across the desert. A ghost who finally had a face. 6 months later, that face appeared in a classified briefing. The ghost of Mosul had been killed in a drone strike. His position identified through pattern analysis that traced his movements across 3 provinces. The analyst who had cracked the pattern was not named in the official report. But Tamara knew. She sat at her desk after the briefing, staring at the notification on her screen. The man who had nearly killed Captain Thornton was dead. The threat that had hung over FOB Hammer was finally ended. And it had started with a supply specialist who refused to be invisible. Her hand moved to the patch sewn inside her uniform, her father's Nigerian army insignia. She traced the worn threads with her fingertip. The moment came. Papa, she whispered, just like you said it would. Outside her window, the sun was setting over the desert. Another day ending, another mission complete. And somewhere in bases and outposts across the world, other soldiers were waiting for their moments. Other women were hiding their potential. Other voices were being ignored. Tamara O'Yelleran had been one of them once. She never would be again. If this story moved you, drop a comment about what resonated most with you, or share if you know someone whose true abilities were hidden until the moment came for them to shine.